Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Full Circle Network. I'm editor-in-chief of FullCircleCinema.com, Jackson Hayes, and today we are here to review episode 7 of Doom Patrol Season 2, otherwise entitled Dumb Patrol, and today I'll be joined by my lead news writer, Jacob Campbell.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jacob. I'm really excited to be here this week and talk about Dump Patrol with you.
Alright, so we got another solid episode of Doom Patrol to talk about. We'll jump right into it. We're going to pick up where last week left off on that big cliffhanger where Chief opens the door of the spaceship, shooting Cliff out into space, and it picks up right there as Cliff falls back to the Earth, seemingly in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in the United States at least. So he has a long journey ahead of him of walking because there's no other mode of transportation, and so let's just start there, Jacob. Well, let's just start with Cliff's journey, I guess, through this episode because it's pretty contained, sidelined from the rest of the story at least. So what were your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I thought Cliff's little bit this episode was great. As you know, I love Robotman in the series, and he had a little bit of smaller part this episode, but anytime he was on screen, which is great for me. I was really glad that they threw us right into what happened with him first because that was the big cliffhanger from last week's episode. Where like, oh my god, what happened to Cliff? Where is he now? How did he was he in space for a little bit? Or just come crashing down? But no, he crashed right back onto Earth, and as you can guess, he was very angry with Chief for throwing him out the airlock. So we get to see him try and I can't even say he worked through those issues as he was trying to find his way back to Doom Manor. It's mainly just him cursing as he trudged home. We do see him have some kind of development though when he's stuck in places, his legs locked up, and he tries to call home to Doom Manor, but there's no one there except the sex ghosts, which I love that callback. But then he has a great moment where he calls his daughter Clara, and we see him still upset with how she reacted to finding out he was still alive. But ultimately, it came to a pretty good ending where once he finally made his way back to Doom Manor, she was there waiting for him with the tape that Robot Man had with Chief's confession of what he did to him. So I'm really glad that there was finally he finally worked through that at the very end because he's been trying to get back to his daughter since the show began and he found out that she was still alive. So him finally getting that resolution in a way was really great this episode for me, and I'm excited to see how they try to work through their issues next episode. How did you feel about it, Jackson?
Yeah, so I'm kind of glad that Cliff kind of didn't think about, like, wasn't really concerned about what was going on with the chief. He was just kind of cementing the fact that, yeah, the chief's a prick and he's going to move on with that and, like, deal with the actual things in his life that he can deal with. And it was very nice for that to come around at the end where he gets to talk to his daughter and they have this brief moment that he feels like she's reaching out to him in the way that he tried to reach out to her earlier. So he's getting something back in his life rather than just, him trying to kind of befriend Dorothy and kind of trying to make up with the chief and his complicated relationship with Jane and all of that. All those things are fleeting and they come and go, but the one thing he really wants is for his daughter to want him in his life, and it seems like that's the direction it's going to go, based on her showing up at the house. So it's definitely a positive for Cliff, and I'm glad he, of all the people in this episode, at least got a positive ending, where some other people definitely didn't. But yeah, on that note, I guess we can jump to just another kind of side story that was going on, which is Rita. Rita goes off to, I guess, shadow is the way she
Mm-hmm.
put it, is shadow an actual beekeeper, because of her role in the play that they're doing. So she goes to talk to a beekeeper, and rather than legitimately doing beekeeping, she more so just has a heart-to-heart discussion with this woman who's also a mom, and she sees her interact with her daughter, and they kind of butt heads because of her dealing with what she learned in Sex Patrol, about what her mother did to her, and then how she hid that from her for all these years. But what were your
I
thoughts
really
with
liked
Rita this week?
her moments this episode. We've seen her try to work through this revelation that her mother slept with her producer to try and get her like one of her first roles, and she's now had this thought in her head that everything she's ever had wasn't because of her own hard work, but it was because of her mother. And so she's been trying to work through those issues. And we finally see that, so a little bit of resolution there as well. but she's still having some trouble accepting who she is and what she's able to do. I really loved her moments because what I like about Rita is I feel like she's like a lot of the heart of this show, because out of all the other members of Doom Patrol, she's trying to accept her powers and do something good with them. We saw a little bit of Cliff in having that as well with was it Steel and Stone. So anytime she has those moments where she tries to fix herself in a way, I really love. And we saw a really great moment at the very end of the episode where she is walking home from talking to the beekeeper, and she's finally able to use her powers under her own control to stop a mugging. So it's really exciting to see that she's able to use her powers for good finally.
Yeah, I completely agree. She's been struggling with the fact that she wants to be a hero since the end of last season into this season, and like kind of trying to figure out how she would go about that. And like now the issue with her mother's kind of put a roadblock in that, but she was able to break through a little bit and try to get a control of what her abilities and her mind, just going into where she wants to be going forward this season. And it was very nice to see her have these kind of these deep conversations with this stranger, and it's kind of one of the best things this show does is all these interesting side characters that just pop up and and do something good for a character or move the character forward. And they're always so interesting. I mean, this woman was very brash and hard and wasn't very nice to Rita, but it was what Rita needed at the moment. And it was good for her to kind of open up and be able to be vulnerable with her. So, yeah, it was really nice. I mean, these were definitely two side things. I think I enjoyed Rita's stuff this week more so than the past couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And another side thing that kind of was all over the place, that's kind of that definitely moved into the mainstream this week was Cyborg's side story, and that moved right into the main plot of this episode, which we can get to. And I'm going to have you do a better job of explaining what these creatures that were in this episode were, because they were definitely interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, the Scants. So, first off, a little bit just about what happens with Cyborg and the rest of the team with a Negative Man and Jane this week was, as you know, we've kind of been like a little on Cyborg side stories this season. They've always felt kind of like some of the slower moments of this season, but when they brought it into the main story for us, I felt it worked really well. I thought Ronnie meshed well with the rest of the team, and they had some great moments. But the main events that happened to them was, Jane, who is now Miranda, in control of her body. Larry, Cyborg, and Ronnie open a box that's delivered to their house that says "Do not open" on many sides of the box. And when they do, they're sprayed by this kind of like purple mist in the air. After that, they all start to act kind of dumb, and they just start making really bad decisions. As we learn later on in the episode, the reason for that is that they've been infected by these beings called Scants. Now, what I really thought was interesting is that they used the Scants was most of the characters and story arcs that have been explored in Doom Patrol have come from Grant Morrison's run on Doom Patrol. But the Scants were, if I'm right, they were first introduced in Gerard Way's and Mike Allred's run on Doom Patrol from 2017. So it was kind of cool to see some newer characters appear in the show, ones that don't really have too much history in the comics. So there's a little bit more leeway with how they can handle them and what they can do with them. But ultimately, we saw what I really liked about Ronnie this episode was that how like accepting she was about how weird the Doom Patrol is. Like she's like, oh, there's just a mummy dude here and this weirdo chick with multiple personalities. And I just thought that was really kind of cool how she acted with them. How did you feel about it, Jackson? Did you feel she meshed well?
Yeah, I think it was she like we've talked about before, she wasn't exactly, in her story wasn't exactly something we expected from Doom Patrol, but coming into the manor, yeah, she was able to flow really well and bounce off of everyone that was there, including Kipling, who showed up. And they were all bouncing back and forth, and it was a good time. And she was able to put on this charm while she was under the guise of the Scants, and it was just something that, it was fun, and it made me enjoy her character some more than I had previously. And definitely, the intrigue at the end of the episode that came out of everything made it a lot more maybe it made the whole storyline feel a little more worthwhile, even though I'm still not completely on board. The 4 or 5 episodes continuously going. This one, I feel made it mesh better and made me feel like it was just everything was worth watching previously, at least.
Yeah, like I want to make sure I know what you're talking about. You're talking about at the very end where once Ronnie is leaving Doom Manor, we find out that she stole some of the Uma jelly from the scans.
So she comes to realize that the Queen explains what the Uma jelly does, and she seems to be aware of what the effects could be. So she decides to take some, and it's like, oh well, clearly she is into whatever. She's not so freaked out by the nature of that adventure and that craziness that she was like, oh, I can benefit out of this. And that makes for an interesting character.
Yeah, especially since we know her past a little bit, where she is supposedly a war criminal, and she submitted these like crimes, but we don't really know what that means for her later on down the line. So her taking this this jelly that supposedly is pure enlightenment for a person, what that will mean for her and the rest of the team.
Right. We have no idea what she's going to use it for at this point, but it's more so that the fact that she just embraced this crazy idea and decided to benefit from it even slightly just in this moment. But, it just makes it more interesting. It makes like she didn't show up and be like, this is too much for me, I'm leaving. That's what a character on another show might have done. But, in this show, she embraces it. They all believe, everyone in this show kind of understands they're in a crazy world and they kind of just have to live with it. Mm-hmm. So it was good to see her just come in and flow. And, and Kipling was good as always. He's always great when he's on this show. And there was no issue here this week. And even Larry got some more positive moments than, his usual brooding self, which was nice to see. Just him being able to, Matt Bomer being able to flesh out the voice a little bit, not be so down and in the dumps all the time.
Yeah. We saw he's still trying to work through his issues from last episode, finding out that him and the negative spirit could have worked out their issues years ago, but now they're stuck in this kind of turmoil that they have to work through. And ultimately he is trying to still resolve those issues that with his son and his grandson who was shot in one of the previous episodes. So now at the very end of the episode, we see him try to go to the hospital and try to talk to them, only to find out they're already gone. So Larry is, his story in Doom Patrol is one of the saddest, honestly, because he always feels very shut off from everyone else. So he always has to work through these issues by himself. So him having to deal with that is always very emotional in every episode.
Yeah, he's not Cliff. He's not going to run around and curse, and he's not Jane, and, he doesn't, run to his different personalities and insult people. He just kind of keeps to himself, and we've seen that from the very first episode of the show, that he keeps it internal. And I'm glad this episode he kind of reached out and asked Miranda, well, not Jane, but Miranda for help. Yeah. And she was able to help him out with one of the other personalities to teleport into the hospital, which was the first sequence they did was actually very funny. When they pretended to be the doctors and they thought they can get away with it.
He's literally just a mummy dude in a lab coat. Like,
right,
hey,
the exact same guy walking up to the same booth saying, hey.
So good.
Like, I'm a doctor. It was very funny. It was really funny, and it was just nice. It was just nice, like I said, to see Larry kind of, even in this trance, kind of open up and be more positive. Mm-hmm. And, it's not that I dislike him negative, no pun intended. But it was just more like I like to let him flesh out here and there, and this episode gave that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Some other highlights from this little section of the episode. Anytime Kipling shows up, I just love because he's used to all this weird stuff all the time, and so he just seems so unimpressed with it all. Like when he showed up at Doom Manor and they were all in their kind of scant
he's
trance.
He's just irritated.
Just like,
they've got themselves involved in the stupidity that he could have avoided.
Yeah, he's like, it literally said, do not open. Why did you open the box? It literally said, do not open on every side. And he was great. And also, definitely a highlight when they went into the painting and ran into the beard hunter.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, dude. And my favorite, I laughed out loud when it happened when they're like, where's Mr. Nobody? I was like, he's busy. And then the ad for Harley Quinn showed up. That was so funny.
I mean, yeah, it was a crazy fourth wall breaking, it was very Mr. Nobody when Mr. Nobody wasn't there, which was fun. It was a fun wrinkle because, obviously Alan Tudyk didn't have the time to be there. Yeah. And it was just kind of one of those things that's like, well, wow, they're being self-referential when the character who usually does that sort of thing isn't there.
It was so good. I loved it.
Yeah, him
But
Beard Hunter hiding, painting himself white and just standing there hiding was very funny.
so good. And they're like, what? They're gonna see only one side is like, "Don't trust me," and they literally just walk right past him.
Right. I mean, it was the humor can be so lowbrow sometimes, but it really, really works.
It's so
Like
good.
it just lands every time. And I thought that, I mean, that whole thing was great, and I think the interaction with the Queen was great, and the way they were able to defeat her, it was just very funny. I mean,
And actually, talking about how they defeated her, this was our first episode with Miranda as the primary of Kay's body. And Jackson, I think you'll agree that she has way more control over the other personalities than Jane does.
I mean, yeah, she allows them.
Yeah.
She's the one guiding them and telling them when to come out, rather than them just forcing themselves out in
Exactly.
when they need be. Which was a benefit this episode. Will it be a benefit later on? I doubt it, because I think obviously from what we saw later on with the missing personalities and the things that Miranda is clearly being shady about, there's a lot more going on to her than meets the eye, and Jane was right to be hesitant about just giving up her spot as primary, because she was there for a reason. She's able to navigate the regular world normally, and at least the world that she lives in due manner. Whereas, Miranda was definitely confused by everything. She wasn't super on board with everything. She tried to stay cool and try to keep everything low key, but it was clearly she was out of her element.
Yeah. But and for part of the episode, it seems like she might honestly be this nice person and one of the nicer personalities. But like you mentioned, we see that little bit at the end where it's revealed that one of the personalities, Scarlet Harlot, is now missing, and her station is locked down, which, as we learned last episode, when a personality, I guess you could say, dies, their station is shut down. So now we kind of get this hint that maybe Miranda is trying to knock off some of the personalities.
Right, she's clearly taking the ones out that she doesn't like, and we know for a fact that could include Jane. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something to watch for as we go through the next few weeks. It's going to be interesting. The underground has started to be a big element of the show, and it's always been great. But I think putting in the forefront as one of the main key elements of the show is just very, very. It works very well, and I'm glad that they're doing it.
Yeah.
I guess we can jump to the chief now, since that was the main the B plot, I guess you would say, of this episode, where we find out that he shoots Cliff out and we don't realize why until he lands in the middle of the Arctic wilderness, and it seemingly we know from that point what he's doing there. And as you might expect, he pulls up and decides to call to his former love, who's passed on, the mother of his daughter. And he tries to contact her about what had all been going on with Dorothy. And she doesn't give an answer he likes, and then he comes face to face with Candlemaker briefly, and he definitely tells him, like, hey, it's coming. You can't stop me. I'm on my way. This is going to happen. And obviously Chief didn't like that answer. Yeah,
so now it's kind of revealed that Candlemaker has always kind of been there in Dorothy because of
he was part of
the cave woman's people.
He was part of their people and part of the spiritual environment, and I guess Chief was not aware of that until this very moment. He knew that the bear deer creature was a part of it, and everything else was, and probably some of the others were a part of what was going on, but he definitely didn't know that this ancient evil had always been there. And I'm sure that was frustrating for him to hear.
Yeah, and ultimately I think Chief realizes that he really can't help Dorothy in any possible way currently. And so at the very end, we see Kipling come back to see him after he's summoned. And the hint that it seems is that either Chief is going to ask Kipling to either take Dorothy away or maybe just completely get rid of Dorothy because she's a danger to herself and others.
I definitely think it's the latter. I think if there was a way to just ship Dorothy off, that he would have done it already. I mean, he did to a sense for 90 years. If there was some magic way to lock her away, if there was something that could contain the Candlemaker, but we saw, I mean, it went right into the underground. It doesn't stop at at mental or spiritual roadblocks. It goes right through them. And it's just seems to be one of those forces that's just unstoppable. And Kipling kind of gets to that point where he's like, you can't, like, this is it. It's the end of the world. And Chief agreed, it's the end of the world. So they have to, if that's what it takes, I think they may have to pull the trigger on that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what we're going to be seeing happen finally next episode.
Right. I mean, she's going to have to come to terms with the fact that he might have to get rid of his daughter for the sake of the world, just because she can't seem to control it, because she wasn't able to mature and kind of understand her powers. She was locked away, and obviously her mental growth was stunted, and she's just not at a point where she can control such a powerful thing, which is unfortunate and sucks. But I mean, that's just, the chief has to live with the fact that that's kind of what he did. He caused that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
that's he put her in that position.
Right. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he forced her to stay down there in Danny, and she wasn't able to move on with her life at all and attempt to hone her abilities or understand them, because he was so afraid of her. And that's something, and he relied so heavy on himself and didn't give her any of the benefit. He was trying the entire time just for him to live, rather than helping her with the time that he had left.
Yeah.
Which, is very selfish, and honestly, it's a very chief move to do, as we've seen so far.
Big chief energy. I guess you could say he doomed her.
Okay, yeah, that's enough. That's enough. Yeah,
Marcus, leave that in.
I'm
Marcus, leave that in.
I'm calling it. This is it. We're done. No more conversation.
I don't even think that's the worst pun I've made on here before.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah. Once again, great episode. Every time there's so many little plots going on in each of the episodes, but it all comes together in the end. And I think it worked out really great this episode. I'm excited to see what happens with Miranda, what happens with Ronnie. Finally, I'm excited to see what happens with her. And ultimately, I just want to see how the chief handles Dorothy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that. I'm really excited to see what... I think one of the things I'm most excited about is to see where Cliff goes with his daughter, and how maybe we get a more positive side of Cliff for a little bit, not so angry. Maybe he gets to open up to his daughter a little bit. I'm definitely excited for those kind of interactions and them to actually bond. Hopefully Rita can, move on with her superhero career. And that's definitely an exciting notion. And then, yeah, just what happens with the chief and Dorothy, and how, he decides to handle this situation as we go into the last couple of episodes. But yeah, I think that's about it. So where can they find you on social media, Jacob?
You can find me on Twitter at JacobCamp13 and at ComicCorner _.
Okay, you can follow me at JacksonHayes67. You can follow the page at Full Circle Cine, CINE. Make sure to check out our work Check out our work at FullCircleCinema.com. And make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment on your thoughts on Dumb Patrol. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out our Stargirl review.
I mean, okay, yeah, you can do that too, I guess.
Yeah, or just leave it open in a tab, please.
Sure. Whatever floats your boat.
Please, just do it.
All right, we'll see you next week.